You awaken, not to the gentle kiss of sunlight, but to the insistent gnawing ache that has become your most loyal companion. It's a cold so profound, so utterly pervasive, that it seems to possess a weight, pressing down upon your very bones. The air, thick and unforgiving, clings to your lungs like a damp shroud, each breath a shallow, hesitant transaction, with a world determined to freeze you from the inside out. Outside, a pale, anemic light struggles to pierce the perpetually overcast sky, painting the frost-rimmed window panes with a somber, muted glow that promises only another day of relentless shivers. You might as well be living inside a poorly defrosted freezer, only without the comforting hum of an appliance, replaced instead by the subtle creaks of a house groaning under the strain of an endless Russian winter. The first sensation every single morning is the numb, wooden refusal of your fingers to properly articulate, a condition so common it feels like a universal truth, a shared secret among those who endure. You remember the premise, whispered like a forgotten prayer, of the weight of frozen bread in a numb hand, and you understand it now, intimately. That stale crust, hard as a cobblestone, becomes a precious, yet painful, burden. Your boots, still on your feet from last night's reluctant slumber, because removing them felt like a betrayal, an invitation for the cold to claim your toes entirely, feel like unyielding blocks of ice fused to your frostbitten feet. The dull ache is not just a sensation. It is a constant droning symphony played on the raw nerves of your souls, a melody that never truly fades, only softens its cruel notes for a fleeting moment. Stepping out, the street greets you with a slap of frigid air that steals your breath and stings your exposed skin, a sensation not unlike diving headfirst into a slushie without the promise of a delicious, sugary reward. The cobbled path, slick with a fine glaze of ice, offers treacherous footing, each step a cautious negotiation between gravity and the fear of a bone-jarring fall. You hear the distant, muffled clatter of a cart, the rhythmic crunch of boots on snow, and the low murmur of voices, thick with the effort of conversation in the biting wind. A plume of white vapor erupts from your lips with every exhale, a fleeting ghost of your warmth, quickly snatched away by the hungry air. The smell of wood smoke, sharp and comforting, mingles with the less pleasant aroma of unwashed bodies, and something vaguely metallic, a scent you've learned to associate with the nearby stables and the grim realities of urban hygiene, or lack thereof. As the morning grudgingly progresses towards a midday that offers little in the way of warmth, you find yourself drawn towards the market square, a chaotic swirl of humanity and desperation. The air here is a tapestry of smells, the sweet, earthy scent of root vegetables piled high, the pungent tang of cured meats, and an underlying aroma of damp wool and unwashed animal hides. Vendors, their faces ruddy and chapped, hawk their wares with a practiced, weary urgency, their breath fogging the air around their shouted prices. You notice a woman meticulously chipping away at a block of ice with a small, dull knife, trying to extract a single frozen fish, an effort that seems to require the patience of a saint and the strength of a blacksmith. It makes you wonder if her fingers will ever truly feel warm again, a thought that sends a fresh shiver down your own spine. Perhaps, if fortune smiles upon you, a tavern awaits, a sanctuary from the relentless siege of the outside world. The heavy wooden door creaks open with a groan, releasing a wave of stale, smoky warmth that hits you like a soft, welcoming punch. The air inside is thick, almost chewable, with the aroma of cheap ale, roasting meat, and a pervasive, slightly acrid scent of unwashed humanity and damp clothing trying to dry by the sputtering fire. Laughter, coarse and boisterous, mingles with the low hum of conversation, the clinking of tankards, and the occasional mournful tune from a lone fiddler whose fingers seem as stiff as your own. It's a vibrant, if grimy, tableau, a brief, boozy respite, where the only true enemy seems to be the empty bottom of your glass, rather than the relentless, insidious chill that has been your constant companion outside these blessed walls. As the afternoon light begins its rapid descent into evening, the world outside the tavern's murky windows seems to darken not just with the setting sun, but with a palpable sense of deepening cold. The wind picks up, a mournful howl that rattles the window panes and whistles through unseen cracks. an auditory reminder of the world's indifference. The cobblestones, which might have offered a fleeting moment of dampness at midday, are now sheathed in a thin, treacherous layer of black ice, reflecting the weak, flickering glow of distant street lamps like malevolent eyes. You pull your worn cloak tighter, the wool, once a comforting embrace, now feeling like a thin, inadequate shield against the encroaching darkness. It's a race against time, a desperate dash to find shelter before the night descends completely, bringing with it a cold so absolute it feels like a physical entity, a predator stalking the streets. Inside the meager warmth of a humble home, the air is still crisp, but mercifully devoid of the biting wind. The single hearth, stoked with precious crackling wood, casts dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls, offering a psychological comfort more potent than its actual heat. The smell of stew, a watery concoction of whatever could be found, fills the small space, a promise of sustenance against the unending hunger. You watch the steam curl upwards from the pot, a fragile, fleeting spiral against the cold reality of the room. Outside, the world has become a canvas of inky black, punctuated only by the distant, ghostly glow of a lantern or the faint, shivering stars. It's a silence that isn't truly silent, but rather a symphony of creaks, groans, and the almost imperceptible whisper of the wind, reminding you that even indoors, you are never truly safe from the cold's icy embrace. Night falls, a heavy, suffocating blanket of darkness and an almost unbearable cold. The air inside your small dwelling grows heavy, the warmth from the meager fire slowly dissipating, leaving behind only embers and the faint smell of ash. You pull your threadbare blankets tight, bundling yourself into a cocoon of desperation, hoping to trap a sliver of your own body heat. In the profound quiet, broken only by the occasional snap of settling timbers, you hear it, the hollow echo of a cough, a thin, rattling sound from a neighboring house, or perhaps from within your own, signaling a deeper, colder surrender. It's a sound that resonates with the chilling premise of existence here, a stark reminder that the true enemy isn't always seen, but felt, a creeping, insidious chill that turns flesh brittle and loyalty thin, transforming grand ambition into a slow, agonizing lesson in the brutal mechanics of survival, one shiver at a time. If you're enjoying this descent into historical frostbite, consider giving it a like, or tell me in the comments what time you finally drifted off to sleep, hopefully to a warmer dream. And then, just as the last vestiges of warmth have abandoned your bones, the cycle begins anew. Another morning dawns, or rather, another gray pallor replaces the inky blackness, signaling the start of another day of endurance. The dull ache in your feet is there, unwavering, a constant companion, and the memory of that frozen bread, its unyielding weight in your numb hand, is fresh. The streets outside are once again stirring with the quiet desperation of life in a deep freeze, the same muffled sounds, the same scent of wood smoke and struggle. It's a relentless rhythm, a brutal waltz with winter, where every step is a calculation, every breath a small victory. The sheer monotony of the cold, its unwavering presence, subtly chips away at everything, not just flesh, but spirit, making even the grandest ambitions feel as fragile as a pane of ice. The market square, a scene of grim commerce, hums with a low, desperate energy. You watch as a farmer, his face a roadmap of weathered lines, tries to barter a scrawny chicken for a handful of frozen potatoes, each item handled with a reverence usually reserved for gold. The air is so frigid that even the spoken words seem to crystallize, hanging briefly in the air like tiny, fragile ice sculptures before dissipating. You overhear whispers of distant battles, of soldiers, Napoleon's soldiers, far from home, facing not just an opposing army, but this very same relentless, soul-crushing cold. Their grand ambition, once a roaring fire, must now be a flickering candle, constantly threatened by the unseen enemy of the frost, transforming their quest into a slow, agonizing lesson in the brutal mechanics of survival, one painful shiver at a time. You realize, with a chilling clarity that cuts deeper than any wind, that this isn't merely a backdrop, it is the very fabric of existence. The creeping, insidious chill that permeates every stone, every breath, every thought, is the true adversary. It turns flesh brittle, making a simple stumble a potentially fatal event, and it wears down the spirit until loyalty itself feels thin, stretched to breaking point under the sheer weight of discomfort. The hollow echo of a cough, a recurring motif in the quiet nights, isn't just a symptom. It's a premonition, a surrender whispered on the frozen air. This world demands a constant, unwavering vigilance, a battle fought not with muskets and cannons, but with every numb hand, every aching foot, and every hesitant, frozen breath. You awaken, not to the gentle kiss of sunlight, but to the insistent, gnawing ache that has become your most loyal companion. It's a cold so profound, so utterly pervasive, that it seems to possess a weight, pressing down upon your very bones. The air, thick and unforgiving, clings to your lungs like a damp shroud, each breath a shallow, hesitant transaction, with a world determined to freeze you from the inside out. Outside, a pale, anemic light struggles to pierce the perpetually overcast sky, painting the frost-rimmed window panes with a somber, muted glow that promises only another day of relentless shivers. You might as well be living inside a poorly defrosted freezer, only without the comforting hum of an appliance, replaced instead by the subtle creaks of a house, groaning under the strain of an endless Russian winter. The first sensation, every single morning, is the numb wooden refusal of your fingers to properly articulate, a condition so common it feels like a universal truth, a shared secret among those who endure. You remember the premise, whispered like a forgotten prayer, of the weight of frozen bread in a numb hand, and you understand it now, intimately. That stale crust, hard as a cobblestone, becomes a precious yet painful burden. Your boots, still on your feet from last night's reluctant slumber, because removing them felt like a betrayal, an invitation for the cold to claim your toes entirely, feel like unyielding blocks of ice fused to your frostbitten feet. The dull ache is not just a sensation. It is a constant droning symphony played on the raw nerves of your souls, a melody that never truly fades, only softens its cruel notes for a fleeting moment. Stepping out, the street greets you with a slap of frigid air that steals your breath and stings your exposed skin, a sensation not unlike diving headfirst into a slushy without the promise of a delicious, sugary reward. The cobbled path, slick with a fine glaze of ice, offers treacherous footing, each step a cautious negotiation between gravity and the fear of a bone-jarring fall. You hear the distant, muffled clatter of a cart, the rhythmic crunch of boots on snow, and the low murmur of voices, thick with the effort of conversation in the biting wind. A plume of white vapor erupts from your lips with every exhale, a fleeting ghost of your warmth, quickly snatched away by the hungry air. The smell of wood smoke, sharp and comforting, mingles with the less pleasant aroma of unwashed bodies, and something vaguely metallic, a scent you've learned to associate with the nearby stables and the grim realities of urban hygiene, or lack thereof. As the morning grudgingly progresses towards a midday that offers little in the way of warmth, you find yourself drawn towards the market square, a chaotic swirl of humanity and desperation. The air here is a tapestry of smells, the sweet, earthy scent of root vegetables piled high, the pungent tang of cured meats, and an underlying aroma of damp wool and unwashed animal hides. Vendors, their faces ruddy and chapped, hawk their wares with a practiced, weary urgency, their breath fogging the air around their shouted prices. You notice a woman meticulously chipping away at a block of ice with a small, dull knife, trying to extract a single frozen fish, an effort that seems to require the patience of a saint and the strength of a blacksmith. It makes you wonder if her fingers will ever truly feel warm again, a thought that sends a fresh shiver down your own spine. Perhaps, if fortune smiles upon you, a tavern awaits, a sanctuary from the relentless siege of the outside world. The heavy wooden door creaks open with a groan, releasing a wave of stale, smoky warmth that hits you like a soft, welcoming punch. The air inside is thick, almost chewable, with the aroma of cheap ale, roasting meat, and a pervasive, slightly acrid scent of unwashed humanity and damp clothing trying to dry by the sputtering fire. Laughter, coarse and boisterous, mingles with the low hum of conversation, the clinking of tankards, and the occasional mournful tune from a lone fiddler whose fingers seem as stiff as your own. It's a vibrant, if grimy, tableau, a brief, boozy respite, where the only true enemy seems to be the empty bottom of your glass, rather than the relentless, insidious chill that has been your constant companion outside these blessed walls. As the afternoon light begins its rapid descent into evening, the world outside the tavern's murky windows seems to darken not just with the setting sun, but with a palpable sense of deepening cold. The wind picks up, a mournful howl that rattles the window panes and whistles through unseen cracks, an auditory reminder of the world's indifference. The cobblestones, which might have offered a fleeting moment of dampness at midday, are now sheathed in a thin, treacherous layer of black ice, reflecting the weak, flickering glow of distant street lamps like malevolent eyes. You pull your worn cloak tighter, the wool, once a comforting embrace, now feeling like a thin, inadequate shield against the encroaching darkness. It's a race against time, a desperate dash to find shelter before the night descends completely, bringing with it a cold so absolute it feels like a physical entity, a predator stalking the streets. Inside the meager warmth of a humble home, the air is still crisp, but mercifully devoid of the biting wind. The single hearth, stoked with precious crackling wood, casts dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls, offering a psychological comfort more potent than its actual heat. The smell of stew, a watery concoction of whatever could be found, fills the small space, a promise of sustenance against the unending hunger. You watch the steam curl upwards from the pot, a fragile, fleeting spiral against the cold reality of the room. Outside, the world has become a canvas of inky black, punctuated only by the distant, ghostly glow of a lantern or the faint, shivering stars. It's a silence that isn't truly silent, but rather a symphony of creaks, groans, and the almost imperceptible whisper of the wind, reminding you that even indoors, you are never truly safe from the cold's icy embrace. Night falls, a heavy, suffocating blanket of darkness and an almost unbearable cold. The air inside your small dwelling grows heavy, the warmth from the meager fire slowly dissipating, leaving behind only embers and the faint smell of ash. You pull your threadbare blankets tight, bundling yourself into a cocoon of desperation, hoping to trap a sliver of your own body heat. In the profound quiet, broken only by the occasional snap of settling timbers, you hear it, the hollow echo of a cough, a thin rattling sound from a neighboring house, or perhaps from within your own, signaling a deeper, colder surrender. It's a sound that resonates with the chilling premise of existence here, a stark reminder that the true enemy isn't always seen, but felt, a creeping, insidious chill that turns flesh brittle and loyalty thin, transforming grand ambition into a slow, agonizing lesson in the brutal mechanics of survival, one shiver at a time. If you're enjoying this descent into historical frostbite, consider giving it a like, or tell me in the comments what time you finally drifted off to sleep, hopefully to a warmer dream. And then, just as the last vestiges of warmth have abandoned your bones, the cycle begins anew. Another morning dawns, or rather, another gray pallor replaces the inky blackness, signaling the start of another day of endurance. The dull ache in your feet is there, unwavering, a constant companion, and the memory of that frozen bread, its unyielding weight in your numb hand, is fresh. The streets outside are once again stirring with the quiet desperation of life in a deep freeze, the same muffled sounds, the same scent of wood smoke and struggle. It's a relentless rhythm, a brutal waltz with winter, where every step is a calculation, every breath a small victory. The sheer monotony of the cold, its unwavering presence, subtly chips away at everything, not just flesh, but spirit, making even the grandest ambitions feel as fragile as a pane of ice. The market square, a scene of grim commerce, hums with a low, desperate energy. You watch as a farmer, his face a roadmap of weathered lines, tries to barter a scrawny chicken for a handful of frozen potatoes, each item handled with a reverence usually reserved for gold. The air is so frigid that even the spoken words seem to crystallize, hanging briefly in the air like tiny, fragile ice sculptures before dissipating. You overhear whispers of distant battles, of soldiers, Napoleon's soldiers, far from home, facing not just an opposing army, but this very same relentless, soul-crushing cold. Their grand ambition, once a roaring fire, must now be a flickering candle, constantly threatened by the unseen enemy of the frost, transforming their quest into a slow, agonizing lesson in the brutal mechanics of survival, one painful shiver at a time. You realize, with a chilling clarity that cuts deeper than any wind, that this isn't merely a backdrop, it is the very fabric of existence. The creeping, insidious chill that permeates every stone, every breath, every thought, is the true adversary. It turns flesh brittle, making a simple stumble a potentially fatal event, and it wears down the spirit until loyalty itself feels thin, stretched to breaking point under the sheer weight of discomfort. The hollow echo of a cough, a recurring motif in the quiet nights, isn't just a symptom. It's a premonition, a surrender whispered on the frozen air. This world demands a constant, unwavering vigilance, a battle fought not with muskets and cannons, but with every numb hand, every aching foot, and every hesitant, frozen breath. The miners, your day, like so many others, begins long before the sun dares to hint at its presence, in the suffocating darkness of a small, cramped hovel, where the cold seems to seep in through the very stone of the walls. The air, heavy with the scent of damp earth and stale wood smoke, offers little comfort as you struggle to rise, your joints protesting with a symphony of creaks and groans. Each movement is a slow, deliberate act of defiance against the pervasive chill that clings to your threadbare clothes. A chilling reminder that the true enemy isn't always seen, but felt, a creeping, insidious presence that turns flesh brittle and ambition thin. You pull on your boots, the dull ache in your frost-bitten feet, already a familiar companion, a melody of suffering played out before the day has even properly begun. The walk to the mine is a ritual of endurance, a journey through a landscape painted in shades of unforgiving gray, where the only sounds are the rhythmic crunch of your boots on the frozen ground and the occasional distant howl of the wind. The air bites at your exposed skin, 1,000 tiny needles pricking at your face, and your breath plumes out in thick white clouds, quickly swallowed by the hungry atmosphere. You pass the hunched figures of other men, their faces grim, their shoulders stooped, each a silent testament to the brutal mechanics of survival. The path, treacherous with patches of black ice, demands your full attention, a single misstep promising a bone-jarring fall that could mean the end of your meager livelihood. Or worse, a deeper, colder surrender to the earth. As you approach the mine entrance, a gaping maw on the side of the frozen hill, the air grows heavier, thick with the scent of damp rock, sulfur, and the faint metallic tang of stale blood. The sounds of distant picks echoing from within, a rhythmic, mournful thudding, are a prelude to the darkness that awaits. You adjust the small, flickering lamp on your head, its meager glow a pathetic attempt to push back against the absolute blackness that seems to swallow all light, all hope, just beyond the threshold. The cold here is different, a damp, penetrating chill that seems to cling to your very soul, a constant reminder of the world's indifference, transforming grand ambition into a slow, agonizing lesson in the brutal mechanics of survival, one shiver at a time. Stepping into the mine is like entering the belly of some colossal slumbering beast, its breath, a cold, damp draft that whispers past you. The air inside is thick with dust, an invisible shroud that coats your lungs with every shallow breath, and the echoing drips of water from unseen crevices create a monotonous, maddening rhythm. You feel the cold, rough stone against your bare hands as you navigate the narrow passages, the walls pressing in around you, a constant claustrophobic embrace. The path slopes downward, ever downward, leading you further away from the pale, anemic light of the outside world into a realm where the only true constant is the dark, and the only true companion is the chill that works its way into your very bones. Deep within the earth, the work begins, a brutal ballet of muscle and metal. Your pickaxe, heavy and cold in your numb hands, rises and falls with a weary regularity, each strike sending a jarring vibration up your arms and into your aching shoulders. The sound of steel against rock, a sharp, ringing clang, reverberates through the cramped tunnel, mingling with the grunts and groans of your fellow miners. Dust, fine and insidious, rises with every blow, coating your skin, filling your nostrils, and settling on your eyelashes, blurring the already dim light of your lamp. You taste the grit on your tongue, a constant, unpleasant reminder of the environment that slowly consumes you, a creeping, insidious chill that makes your flesh brittle and your loyalty to anything but survival thin. The air, despite the exertion, remains stubbornly cold, a damp, oppressive chill that seems to cling to the very rock around you. Sweat, cold and clammy, trickles down your back, only to be met by the frigid air, creating a sensation of perpetual dampness that saps your remaining warmth. Your fingers, despite the rhythmic pounding, remain stubbornly numb, barely registering the rough texture of the rock or the cold steel of your tools. The dull ache in your feet, a constant droning symphony, intensifies with every shift of your weight, a stark reminder of the frozen bread and the boots fused to frostbitten feet from the premise that governs this brutal existence. You press on, for there is no other choice, no other path in this world of relentless shivers. A short, grudging pause arrives, less a break and more a moment of temporary reprieve from the incessant labor. You huddle in a small, damp alcove, the cold rock pressing against your back, trying to conserve what little body heat you possess. Your meal, a meager chunk of frozen bread, hard as a cobblestone, is a painful burden in your numb hand, each bite a struggle, each swallow a transaction, with a world determined to freeze you from the inside out. A communal flask of watery kvass is passed around, its sour tang, a fleeting distraction from the gnawing hunger and the pervasive chill. There is little conversation, only the shared silence of exhaustion, punctuated by the hollow echo of a cough that signals a deeper, colder surrender. You glance at Boris, an older miner whose face is a roadmap of grime and weariness, his cough a constant rattling presence in the damp air. His hands, gnarled and thick with scars, move slowly as he gnaws at his own frozen crust, his eyes distant, lost in a landscape of past hardships. His youngest son, no older than 10, already works beside him, his small frame dwarfed by the pickaxe, his face smudged with soot, a testament to the brutal continuity of this life. You see in Boris's eyes not grand ambition, but a slow, agonizing lesson in the brutal mechanics of survival, one shiver at a time, a grim determination to simply endure, for himself and for the fragile life he tends. The work resumes, the rhythmic thudding of picks against rock picking up once more, a monotonous drumbeat that seems to echo the very pulse of your weary heart. The dust continues to rise, a fine choking powder that makes each breath a shallow, hesitant transaction. Your muscles scream in protest, your back aches with a dull, persistent pain, and your head pounds with the constant, echoing clang of metal. The darkness, once merely an absence of light, now feels like a heavy, physical presence, pressing down upon you, threatening to swallow you whole. Just as the cold threatens to claim your toes entirely, a betrayal of your own body. The passage of time in the mine is a fluid, distorted thing, marked not by the sun's arc but by the increasing weight in your limbs and the deepening ache in your bones. Each swing of the pick, each shovelful of rock, is a repetition of the last, a monotonous dance with gravity and exhaustion. The flickering light of your lamp casts grotesque, dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls, turning familiar shapes into monstrous specters that seem to mock your efforts. The smell of damp earth and stale sweat becomes a part of you, clinging to your clothes, seeping into your very skin, a constant reminder of the brutal mechanics of survival. The dangers here are not abstract, but very real, tangible threats that lurk in the damp, echoing darkness. The sudden, ominous creak of timber, the soft trickle of falling pebbles, the faint, sweet smell of gas that can ignite with a single spark. These are the silent predators of the deep. You work with a quiet, constant vigilance, your senses hyper-alert, knowing that a moment of inattention could lead to a deeper, colder surrender than mere frostbite. The cold, though insidious, is often a secondary concern to the sudden, crushing weight of a collapsing tunnel, or the unseen poison of the air, turning flesh brittle in an instant. As the shift grudgingly nears its end, your movements become slower, more deliberate, each action requiring a monumental effort of will. Your hands, raw and chapped, are a mass of dull aches and throbbing pain. The numbness, a welcome reprieve from the constant suffering. The dull ache of boots fused to frostbitten feet has spread, a relentless tide of discomfort that now encompasses your entire lower body. You stumble more often, catching yourself on the rough walls, your breath coming in ragged gasps, the hollow echo of a cough from a nearby miner, a grim foreshadowing of your own inevitable fate. Finally, the signal comes, a distant, muffled shout that is music to your weary ears. The slow, arduous climb out of the mine begins, each step a struggle against the accumulated exhaustion and the persistent ache. As you near the entrance, a faint, anemic light begins to pierce the gloom, a promise of the outside world, however harsh it may be. The air, though still frigid, feels thinner, less oppressive, a slight respite from the heavy, dust-laden atmosphere of the tunnels. You emerge, blinking, into the pale, muted glow of the late afternoon, your body a testament to the brutal mechanics of survival. The journey home is a blur of numb exhaustion, your mind a hazy fog of fatigue and cold. The familiar streets, now cloaked in the deepening shadows of evening, seem to stretch endlessly before you. The smell of wood smoke, once comforting, now seems to mock your own internal chill, a reminder of the warmth you crave but cannot fully attain. You pull your worn cloak tighter, the inadequate wool offering little protection against the biting wind that seems to possess a weight, pressing down upon your very bones, threatening to steal what little warmth remains. Inside your meager dwelling, the air is still crisp, but the absence of the biting wind is a small, precious mercy. You slump onto a rough wooden stool, the dull ache of your feet, a constant companion, now joined by the pervasive throb of your entire body. The single hearth, stoked with precious, crackling wood, offers a psychological comfort more potent than its actual heat. Its dancing shadows, a brief, fleeting distraction from the brutal realities of existence. The smell of stew, a watery concoction, fills the small space, a promise of sustenance against the unending hunger that gnaws at your insides. You watch the steam curl upwards from the pot, a fragile, fleeting spiral against the cold reality of the room, a ghostly breath quickly snatched away by the hungry air. Your hands, still numb and unresponsive, struggle to hold the spoon, the simple act of eating a monumental effort. The taste of the thin broth is bland, but its warmth, however fleeting, is a small victory against the creeping, insidious chill that has been your constant companion. Outside, the world has become a canvas of inky black, punctuated only by the distant, ghostly glow of a lantern, or the faint, shivering stars, a cold so absolute it feels like a physical entity. As night falls, a heavy, suffocating blanket of darkness and an almost unbearable cold, you prepare for another restless slumber. The warmth from the meager fire slowly dissipates, leaving behind only embers and the faint smell of ash. You pull your threadbare blankets tight, bundling yourself into a cocoon of desperation, hoping to trap a sliver of your own body heat. In the profound quiet, broken only by the occasional snap of settling timbers, you hear it, the hollow echo of a cough, a thin, rattling sound from a neighboring house, or perhaps from within your own, signaling a deeper, colder surrender. The image of Boris, his gnarled hands, his perpetual cough, lingers in your mind, a stark reminder of the cost of this life. His son, following in his footsteps, a fresh face already etched with the promise of the same brutal existence. Their grand ambition, once perhaps a hope for a better life, has been transformed into a slow, agonizing lesson in the brutal mechanics of survival, one shiver at a time, each day a test of endurance against the relentless, insidious chill that turns flesh brittle and loyalty thin, even to one's own dreams. The thought is a cold comfort, a shared burden in the endless winter. And so, the cycle closes, only to begin anew with the promise of another dawn, another day of descent into the earth's frozen embrace. The weight of frozen bread in a numb hand, the dull ache of boots fused to frost-bitten feet, the hollow echo of a cough. These are the indelible marks of your existence. This creeping, insidious chill is the true adversary, shaping every thought, every action, every desperate breath. It is a battle fought not with muskets and cannons, but with every numb hand, every aching foot, and every hesitant, frozen breath, a testament to the brutal mechanics of survival. The spinners. Your morning begins with the same insistent ache, the cold, a constant, unwelcome guest in your small dwelling. The air, heavy with the scent of damp wool and the lingering chill of the night, offers little solace as you rise from your straw pallet. Your fingers, slender and usually nimble, feel like numb, wooden clubs, refusing to properly articulate, a condition so common it feels like a universal truth. You remember the premise of the weight of frozen bread in a numb hand, and you understand it now, intimately, as you struggle to fasten the meager buttons of your coarse, woolen dress. The dull ache in your feet, a constant droning symphony, is already a familiar companion, a cruel melody that never truly fades. The walk to the spinning workshop, though shorter than some, is still a trial, a battle against the biting wind that whips down the narrow, icy streets. Your breath plumes out in thick, white clouds, quickly snatched away by the hungry air, a fleeting ghost of your warmth. You pull your threadbare shawl tighter around your shoulders, the wool, once a comforting embrace, now feeling like a thin, inadequate shield against the encroaching cold. The cobblestones, slick with a fine glaze of ice, offer treacherous footing, each step a cautious negotiation, the fear of a bone-jarring fall, a constant companion. For an injury means not just pain, but the loss of your meager livelihood. As you approach the workshop, a low, rhythmic hum begins to permeate the frigid air, a mechanical symphony that signals the start of another relentless day. The smell of lanolin, damp wool, and something vaguely metallic and oily hangs heavy in the air, a scent that now defines your waking hours. You push open the heavy wooden door, its groan a familiar sound, and step into an environment that, while enclosed, offers little true warmth, only a slightly less brutal version of the outside world, a chilling reminder that the true enemy isn't always seen, but felt, a creeping, insidious chill that turns flesh brittle. Inside, the air is thick with airborne lint and dust, a fine, almost invisible shroud that coats your lungs with every breath. The whirring and clanking of the spinning wheels, row upon endless row, creates a deafening cacophony that makes conversation a shouted, desperate effort. The cold, though slightly ameliorated by the sheer number of bodies, still permeates the stone walls and the metal of the machinery, radiating a damp, pervasive chill that works its way into your very bones. Your fingers, despite the rhythmic, repetitive motions you are about to begin, remain stubbornly numb, a testament to the relentless, insidious cold. Your station awaits, a small, cramped space before a spinning wheel whose metal parts are perpetually cold to the touch. The fine threads of wool, delicate and demanding, require your utmost attention, your nimble fingers, despite their numbness, guiding them with practiced precision. The repetitive motion, hour after hour, of feeding the raw wool and tending to the rapidly spinning spindle is hypnotizing in its monotony, yet utterly draining in its physical toll. You taste the fine lint on your tongue, a constant, unpleasant reminder of the air you breathe. A slow, agonizing lesson in the brutal mechanics of survival, one shiver at a time. The noise of the machines is a constant, droning presence, a symphony of industry that slowly chips away at your ability to focus, making your head ache with a dull, persistent throb. Your eyes, strained from the constant, close attention to the delicate threads, begin to burn and blur, the fine dust adding to the irritation. Your back aches from standing, stooped over the machinery, for hours on end, and your fingers, once nimble, now ache with a deep, persistent pain. The dull ache of boots fused to frost-bitten feet now extending to your hands, a constant, shared suffering. A short, hurried break is granted. a fleeting moment of respite from the relentless whirring. You huddle with other women, their faces pale and drawn, their shoulders stooped, in a small, unheated corner of the workshop. Your meal, a meager chunk of frozen bread, hard as a cobblestone, is a painful burden in your numb hand. Each bite a struggle, each swallow a transaction, with a world determined to freeze you from the inside out. There is little conversation, only the shared silence of the relentless hum of the spinning wheels, which had once seemed merely a backdrop to your exhaustion, now feels like a relentless, grinding menace, a metallic predator lurking in the perpetually dim light. The workshop itself, a cavern of cold stone and unforgiving machinery, offers no true sanctuary, only a different permutation of the pervasive chill. You move with a practiced, weary grace, your fingers, still stubbornly numb from the biting outdoor air, navigating the delicate threads, a perpetual dance with danger. The floors, slick with a fine film of grease and stray fibers, are a constant, treacherous dance partner, each step a negotiation with gravity. The ever-present fear of a bone-jarring fall, a phantom limb that throbs with its own cold ache. A simple slip here, a moment of lapsed concentration, and the unforgiving gears could claim a finger, a hand, or worse, leaving you not just maimed but utterly destitute in a world that has little patience for the broken. The air itself feels like a weapon, thick with the invisible shroud of airborne Lenten dust that settles on your tongue like a fine gritty snow, coating your lungs with every shallow, hesitant breath. You cough, a dry, rattling sound that feels all too familiar, a hollow echo that seems to resonate from the very premise of this brutal existence, signaling a deeper, colder surrender. The machinery, an endless array of belts and whirring cogs, operates with a mechanical indifference, its metallic parts perpetually cold to the touch, a stark contrast to the burning friction it generates. Here, a moment of distraction, a fleeting thought of the frozen bread waiting at home, could mean a sleeve caught, a limb dragged into the hungry maw of the mechanism, transforming grand ambition into a slow, agonizing lesson in the brutal mechanics of survival, one painful shiver at a time. You recall the whispers of young Thomas, barely more than a boy, who worked the looms in the next hall, his small, nimble fingers deemed perfect for untangling the stubborn threads. One frigid morning, his hands, numb and stiff from the relentless cold that seeped through the factory walls, fumbled a knot. The fabric, once a docile stream, snagged, pulling his small arm with a speed that defied the sluggishness of the air. A shriek, thin and sharp like splintering ice, cut through the deafening clatter, followed by the sickening thud of the loom halting its mechanical rhythm. When they pulled him free, his arm was a mangled ruin, a grotesque testament to the machine's hunger, leaving him a living, breathing example of how quickly the creeping, insidious chill could turn flesh brittle and a livelihood to mere ash. It wasn't just the machinery that posed a threat. Even the simple act of moving through the crowded factory floor was fraught with peril. The pathways, narrow and perpetually congested with bales of raw wool and finished cloth, became obstacle courses in the dim, flickering gaslight. You once saw old Ilara, her vision failing from years of straining over delicate threads in poor light, stumble over an unseen obstruction. She fell, her head striking a protruding metal beam with a dull, sickening crack that sent a fresh shiver down your spine. They carried her out, a lifeless bundle of rags, her last thought, perhaps, of the warmth she'd never quite achieved. A grim reminder that even a brief respite from the wheels, incessant hum, could be a fatal error in this unforgiving tableau. Beyond the textile mills, in the deeper, darker realms of the coal mines, the dangers were amplified by the suffocating blackness and the earth's own unpredictable temper. Imagine yourself descending into that abyssal maw, the air growing heavy with damp earth and the pervasive metallic tang of stale blood. The cold, here a damp, penetrating chill that clung to your very soul. The flickering lamp on your head cast dancing, grotesque shadows on the rough-hewn walls, turning every creak and groan of the timbers into a premonition. A sudden, terrifying shift in the earth, a rumble that vibrated through your very bones, could send tons of rock cascading down, crushing men and their meager tools with an indifferent, brutal force, transforming living, breathing ambition into a flattened, forgotten memory. The air in those subterranean labyrinths, already thick with dust, was often laced with unseen, insidious poisons. Fire damp, a mixture of methane and other gases, accumulated in pockets, waiting for a single spark from a pickaxe-striking rock, or a poorly shielded lamp to erupt in a blinding, searing inferno. You'd heard tales of entire sections of the mine consumed in a flash, men vaporized in an instant, their bodies turned to ash, their lungs burned to cinders. Those who survived the initial blast were often left with horrific burns, their flesh cooked or slowly suffocated by the afterdamp. A noxious cocktail of carbon monoxide that stole your breath with a silent, invisible kiss. A truly deeper, colder surrender than any frostbite could offer. Then there was the water, a constant, insidious enemy in the mines. Seeping through cracks in the rock, it would collect in dark pools, sometimes rising unexpectedly after heavy rains or a spring thaw, trapping miners in ever-shrinking air pockets. You'd heard the desperate, muffled screams of those caught in the sudden floods, their pleas swallowed by the surging, icy depths. The cold, damp environment was also a breeding ground for disease, the lung-choking dust combining with the perpetual chill to create a symphony of coughs, each one a hollow echo of the premise, a testament to the slow, agonizing lesson in survival that was played out in every breath, making loyalty to one's own health a luxury few could afford. Even in the more refined settings, like the burgeoning chemical factories, a different, equally insidious set of dangers awaited. Imagine the cloying, acidic smell that permeated the very air, stinging your nostrils and burning your throat with every inhale. You might be tasked with stirring vats of bubbling, caustic liquids, your hands, despite the thick, clumsy gloves, feeling the insidious heat through the worn leather. A splash, a sudden tremor, could send burning acid showering over your exposed skin, sizzling and melting flesh with a speed that made the slow, creeping chill of winter seem almost merciful. The fumes, often invisible, worked their way into your lungs, slowly poisoning you, a silent, unseen enemy that turned flesh brittle from the inside out, a true testament to the brutal mechanics of survival. Consider the horrors of the early match factories, where women and children dipped wooden sticks into vats of white phosphorus. The air, thick with its sickly sweet, garlic-like odor, was a silent killer. You would watch, perhaps, as a young girl's teeth began to ache, then loosen, her jaw swelling grotesquely before her bones literally rotted away, a condition known with chilling simplicity as Fosse jaw. Her face would become a swollen, necrotic mask, her breath putrid, her very bones consumed by the insidious chemical. This slow, agonizing decay, a consequence of earning a few meager coins, was a far more terrifying surrender than any frostbite, a true descent into the brutal mechanics of survival, where your own body turned against you, one agonizing, bone-dissolving shiver at a time. Moving beyond the obvious hazards of industry, the very sustenance of life was often a vehicle for bizarre and dangerous deceptions. Take your daily bread, for instance, that humble staple commodity. You might assume it was a simple blend of flour and water, but in these desperate times, scarcity and greed conspired to transform it into a culinary horror show. Millers, keen to stretch their precious flour, would often mix in sawdust, chalk, or even plaster of Paris, giving the loaf a deceptive weight and whiteness. You'd bite into a crust, hard as a cobblestone, and feel the gritty texture of something that decidedly wasn't grain, your numb hand holding a painful burden that was less food, more architectural experiment. The milk, delivered in large, open churns, was another prime candidate for audacious adulteration. Imagine the vendor, with a sly wink and a bucket of questionable additions, transforming thin, watery milk into something ostensibly richer. Chalk was a popular choice, providing a milky opacity, while sheep's brains or plaster were sometimes added for a thicker consistency, giving your morning beverage a truly unsettling mouthfeel. Even more chilling were the dyes used to make it appear creamier or fresher, often made from toxic lead or arsenic compounds. You'd drink your daily dose, hoping for strength, and instead ingest a slow, insidious poison, a creeping chill that permeated your insides, making loyalty to your local dairyman feel utterly misplaced. And what of the beer, that precious, warming respite from the cold? You might think a simple brew of hops, malt, and water would be safe, but brewers of the era were true alchemists of deception. To enhance flavor and create a stronger kick, they would add surprising and often deadly ingredients. Salt, molasses, and even opium were common, providing a potent, if dangerous, cocktail. Belladonna, a highly toxic plant, was sometimes included to induce a pleasant stupor, while lead shavings were occasionally used to give it a sweet taste. Each tankard, clinking against another in the smoky warmth of the tavern, was a gamble, a boozy respite where the only true enemy might not be an empty glass, but a slow, agonizing lesson in toxicology, one dangerously sweet sip at a time. Even the meat, that rare and precious protein, was not immune to these culinary abominations. You might eye a cut of beef in the market, its deep red hue promising succulence, unaware of the grim realities behind its appearance. Diseased animals, often those that had succumbed to illness rather than the butcher's knife, would find their way to the stalls, their flesh disguised. To make old or unappetizing meat appear fresh and vibrant, butchers would sometimes inject it with animal blood, or even dye it with toxic compounds like cochineal or lead-based pigments. The pungent tang of cured meats mingled with the less pleasant aroma of decay, a scent you'd learn to associate with the grim realities of urban hygiene, or lack thereof, your appetite a fragile thing in this brutal tableau of survival. In a world where science was a nascent, often mistrusted concept, and doctors were as likely to bleed you as cure you, people turned to a bewildering array of absurd beliefs and strange practices for solace. For any ailment, from a persistent cough to a raging fever, you might consult a local wise woman or a traveling quack, whose remedies were often more theatrical than effective. Imagine being prescribed a poultice of boiled mouse entrails for a headache, or a concoction of spiderwebs and soot for a lingering cough, the hollow echo of which still signaled a deeper, colder surrender. These were not just desperate measures. They were deeply ingrained cultural practices, a testament to humanity's enduring, if misguided, hope for relief from the brutal mechanics of existence. Potions, brewed under specific lunar phases or with ingredients gathered from ancient graveyards, were common panaceas. You might be told to wear a dried toad around your neck to ward off the plague, or to carry a specific type of stone to protect against frostbite, despite the dull ache of boots fused to frostbitten feet being a daily reality. Mercury, a known poison, was paradoxically used to treat syphilis, its toxic effects often mistaken for a cure, slowly turning flesh brittle and loyalty to life itself thin. The concept of germ theory was centuries away, making hygiene practices almost non-existent, and allowing diseases to rampage through crowded populations with unchecked ferocity, a constant, insidious chill that claimed lives with brutal efficiency. Superstitious remedies permeated every aspect of life, from childbirth to death. To ensure a healthy baby, a mother might be advised to sleep with an axe under her bed, or to drink a brew made from scraped fingernails. For toothaches, a common torment in a world without dental care, you might be instructed to rub a dead man's tooth on your gum, or to carry a bag of ants' legs. These practices, bizarre and often grotesque by modern standards, were deeply serious attempts to exert some control over a world that felt overwhelmingly hostile and unpredictable, a desperate battle fought not with muskets and cannons, but with every numb hand and every hesitant, frozen breath. Quack doctors, with their flamboyant advertisements and dubious elixirs, preyed on the desperation of the populace. They promised miraculous cures for everything from consumption to impotence, often selling tinctures that were little more than alcohol and colored water, or worse, laced with dangerous narcotics like laudanum. You might spend your last few hard-earned coins on a bottle of Dr. Bartholomew's Universal Panacea, convinced that its bitter taste meant it must be working, only to find your symptoms unchanged or perhaps even worsened. It was a cruel irony, a slow, agonizing lesson in gullibility, where the only true cure was often a deeper, colder surrender to the inevitable, leaving grand ambition to wither like a frostbitten leaf. The sheer brutality of daily life, compounded by these absurdities, created a unique landscape of human resilience and suffering. Imagine a broken limb, not set by a skilled surgeon, but by a bone setter whose knowledge was based on folk remedies and guesswork. The pain a constant, gnawing presence far more insistent than any cold. Or a fever, treated with bloodletting until you were too weak to stand, your life slowly draining away for a practice now known to be utterly ineffective, yet accepted as common wisdom. This was a world where survival was a constant, calculated gamble, where the creeping, insidious chill wasn't just in the air, but in the very fabric of medicine and justice, turning flesh brittle and loyalty to reason thin. So as you navigate this treacherous landscape of industrial danger, culinary deception, and medical malpractice, remember that for every visible enemy, there are a dozen unseen ones, each ready to transform grand ambition into a slow, agonizing lesson in the brutal mechanics of survival. It makes one wonder if a simple, honest cup of tea, unadulterated and truly warm, wasn't the greatest luxury of all, a fleeting dream in a world determined to freeze you from the inside out, one shiver, one cough, one questionable meal at a time. And if you're still awake after contemplating the joys of phossy jaw and plaster bread, perhaps you've achieved a level of stoicism truly worthy of the era. The relentless, insidious chill that permeates every stone, every breath, every thought, is not merely an adversary to your comfort. It is a profound sculptor of your very being, a constant, unseen force that carves away at health and resilience. The brutal mechanics of survival, which demand every ounce of your energy simply to find the next morsel of frozen bread or maintain a sliver of warmth, leave little room for the luxury of robust health. Your body, perpetually under siege, becomes a fragile fortress, its defenses slowly crumbling under the relentless assault of cold, hunger, and an array of unseen enemies far more insidious than a musket ball. This world, you quickly learn, offers no respite, transforming grand ambition into a slow, agonizing lesson in the brutal mechanics of survival, one shiver, one ache, one insidious illness at a time. You awaken, not to the gentle kiss of sunlight, but to the insistent, gnawing ache that has become your most loyal companion, now joined by a new, more sinister symphony playing within your own chest. Perhaps it began as a mere tickle, a minor irritation, but now a persistent, hollow echo of a cough has taken root, a sound that resonates from deep within your lungs, signaling a deeper, colder surrender than mere frostbite. This, you soon discover, is the insidious whisper of consumption, or as some call it, the White Plague. A disease that feasts on the very essence of life, turning flesh brittle with an almost poetic cruelty. It is a slow, agonizing lesson in the brutal mechanics of survival, where your own body becomes a battlefield, each breath a desperate skirmish. The cough becomes your constant companion, a dry, hacking sound in the early stages, then evolving into a wet, rattling gasp that scrapes at your throat, leaving a raw, aching sensation. You notice the subtle, yet relentless, drain on your vitality, a weariness that permeates your very bones, making even the simplest tasks feel like monumental feats of endurance. Your appetite, once a ravenous beast demanding sustenance against the cold, dwindles to a fragile bird, pecking at the meager offerings of frozen bread, with a disinterest that chills you more than the winter air. The dull ache of boots fused to frost-bitten feet seems almost a minor inconvenience compared to the deep, pervasive fatigue that now claims you. Then come the nights, a cruel parody of rest, where you awaken drenched in a cold, clammy sweat, your threadbare blankets clinging to your shivering form like a damp shroud. This, night sweat, a chilling paradox of warmth and frigidity, leaves you utterly exhausted, your body a hollow shell drained of its vital fluids. You notice the slow, terrifying disappearance of your own flesh, your cheeks hollow, your ribs protruding like an architectural blueprint beneath your skin, a gaunt testament to the disease's voracious hunger. The creeping, insidious chill has indeed turned flesh brittle, not just from the outside, but from within, a slow, agonizing transformation. The irony of consumption is not lost on you, a dark jest from a cruel universe, as you literally feel yourself being consumed from the inside out, your body a dwindling candle against the encroaching darkness. Your breath grows shallower, each inhale a hesitant transaction with air that feels thick and unforgiving, and the hollow echo of your cough now carries a faint, metallic tang of blood, a grim signature of the disease's progress. It's a terrifying intimacy with your own mortality, a brutal waltz with winter where the final dance partner is not the cold, but the relentless, insidious chill of sickness itself, leading to a deeper, colder surrender. But consumption is not the only phantom stalking these icy streets. Imagine, if you will, a sudden, violent assault on your senses. A rapid descent into a world of burning fever and blinding headache. A stark contrast to the slow, creeping chill you have grown accustomed to. This is the brutal introduction to typhus, or, quote, camp fever, a virulent visitor that thrives in the crowded, unsanitary conditions that define much of this era. It transforms the mundane reality of your existence into a terrifying, hallucinatory nightmare, a swift and brutal lesson in the mechanics of survival, where loyalty to your own mind becomes a fragile thing. The fever takes hold with a ferocious grip, turning your skin into a landscape of scorching heat, a startling departure from the perpetual cold that has been your most loyal companion. Your head pounds with an insistent, rhythmic throb, as if a blacksmith were at work behind your eyes, each hammer blow echoing through your skull. Every joint, every muscle, protests with a dull ache, a symphony of suffering that dwarfs even the memory of boots, fused to frostbitten feet. You lie in your meager dwelling, shivering uncontrollably despite the internal blaze, your body a battleground where heat and cold wage a relentless, confusing war. Then, a day or two into this internal inferno, a new, unsettling pattern emerges on your skin, a faint, reddish rash, almost like tiny pinpricks, appearing first on your torso, then spreading outwards. These are the petechiae, the telltale spots that mark the progression of this insidious visitor, a chilling signature that whispers of the disease's relentless grip. Your mind, once sharp despite the hardships, begins to fray at the edges, slipping into a confused delirium, a fog of feverish dreams and waking nightmares where reality and hallucination intertwine like twisted threads of yarn. The world outside, once a place of tangible struggle, dissolves into a blurry, terrifying tableau. You might babble incoherently, your words slurring and nonsensical, your eyes staring blankly at unseen specters, a horrifying manifestation of your mind's deeper, colder surrender. The smell of unwashed bodies, of sickness and despair, becomes a pervasive, almost suffocating presence in the cramped space, mingling with the faint aroma of wood smoke. Your tongue, coated and dry, feels like sandpaper in your mouth, and the constant thirst gnaws at you, even as the act of swallowing becomes a painful, difficult transaction. It is a rapid, brutal descent, transforming grand ambition into a desperate, confused plea for a moment of clarity. Typhus is a swift, brutal lesson in the brutal mechanics of survival, a disease that claims its victims with a terrifying efficiency, often leaving behind a trail of emaciated, bewildered survivors, or, more commonly, a grim, silent testament to its power. The fever, if it breaks, leaves you utterly depleted, your strength sapped, your loyalty to your own physical capabilities stretched thin. Many, weakened by the initial assault, succumb to secondary infections or the sheer exhaustion, their hollow echo of a cough fading into a final, profound silence, a chilling reminder that the true enemy isn't always seen, but felt, even in the heat of a fever. And then there is smallpox, a name whispered with a mixture of dread and grim resignation, a disease that leaves its mark not just on the body, but on the very soul, turning flesh brittle in the most horrifying way imaginable. It begins, like so many other insidious invaders, with a sudden, violent fever, a relentless heat that burns through your veins, accompanied by a profound weariness and a headache that feels as though your skull is being slowly crushed. You might dismiss it as another bout of the ubiquitous winter sickness, a common cold, a fleeting thought of the frozen bread and the dull ache of boots fused to frost-bitten feet, a brief distraction from the growing discomfort. But then, after a few days of this internal inferno, the first ominous signs appear. Tiny reddish spots, almost like a rash, emerging first on your face and then spreading with terrifying speed across your entire body. These are not mere blemishes, they are the harbingers of a truly grotesque transformation. Within hours, these spots begin to swell, forming raised, fluid-filled pustules, each one a tiny, angry blister that throbs with an unbearable pain. Your skin becomes a canvas of agony, a landscape of weeping lesions that ooze and itch with maddening persistence, transforming grand ambition into a desperate primal urge to simply scratch, to tear at your own flesh. The smell of your own body, once merely unwashed, now takes on a pungent, sickly sweet odor of infection, a pervasive aroma that clings to your threadbare blankets and fills your small dwelling. Your eyes, if they are not already swollen shut by the burgeoning pustules, burn and itch, the fear of blindness, a tangible, terrifying presence. Each movement, each brush against your clothing sends a fresh wave of excruciating pain through your ravaged skin, making even the act of pulling your threadbare blankets tight a torturous transaction. The creeping, insidious chill now feels like a secondary concern, a mere backdrop to the fiery agony that consumes you, a deeper, colder surrender to the disease's brutal embrace. If you are one of the fortunate few to survive this horrific ordeal, the smallpox leaves an indelible legacy, deep, pitted scars that permanently disfigure your face and body, a grim roadmap of your battle with the disease. Your flesh, once smooth, is now brittle, a testament to the brutal mechanics of survival, a constant visual reminder of the enemy that was not always seen, but profoundly felt. Many, however, do not survive, succumbing to secondary infections, overwhelming fever, or the sheer exhaustion, their hollow echo of a cough silenced forever, leaving only the memory of a face once known, now erased by the disease's cruel artistry. Beyond the virulent fevers and wasting diseases, another, more subtle but equally deadly, adversary lurks in the very sustenance you seek to survive: food poisoning. In a world devoid of refrigeration, where hygiene is a luxury and knowledge of bacteria is yet to dawn, every meal is a calculated gamble, a desperate transaction with a world determined to freeze you from the inside out, or, perhaps more ironically, to expel you from it entirely. That precious piece of frozen bread, hard as a cobblestone, or the meager stew, a watery concoction of whatever could be found, could easily become the vehicle for a swift, agonizing lesson in the brutal mechanics of survival. It begins, often subtly, with a dull, gnawing discomfort in your gut, a feeling that something is amiss, a discord in the symphony of your usual aches and pains. This quickly escalates into a cramping, twisting agony that doubles you over, a pain far more insistent than the dull ache of boots fused to frost-bitten feet. Then comes the violent expulsion, a sudden, uncontrollable urge to vomit, your body rejecting the offending sustenance with a ferocious, convulsive force. You retch, bile burning your throat, your stomach heaving until there is nothing left but dry, painful spasms, leaving you weak and trembling, your grand ambition reduced to a desperate plea for relief. The diarrhea follows, an unstoppable torrent that drains your body of its vital fluids with alarming speed, leaving you parched and utterly depleted. The smell in your small dwelling becomes a potent, suffocating miasma of sickness and waste, a testament to the brutal realities of urban hygiene, or lack thereof. Each trip outside, a desperate dash through the biting wind to the communal latrine, becomes a treacherous negotiation between gravity and the fear of a bone-jarring fall, your legs weak and trembling, your loyalty to your own physical control stretched thin. You feel yourself wasting away, your strength ebbing with every violent expulsion, a chilling reminder that the true enemy isn't always seen, but felt, even in the food that promises life. Dehydration sets in, a creeping, insidious chill that dries your mouth, makes your eyes sink into their sockets, and leaves your head pounding with a dull, persistent throb. The lack of clean water, a precious commodity in itself, only exacerbates the terrifying spiral downwards, transforming a simple stomach upset into a potentially fatal ordeal. Many, especially the very young or the very old, succumb to the relentless drain on their systems, their hollow echo of a cough fading into a final, profound silence, a deeper, colder surrender to the brutal mechanics of survival, where even the most basic need for food becomes a perilous gamble. When these insidious illnesses take hold, When the creeping chill turns flesh brittle and loyalty thin, where do you turn for succor? The answer, for many, is a place of last resort, a grim threshold often crossed with more dread than hope: the hospital. These institutions, unlike the pristine, gleaming sanctuaries of modernity, are not places of healing in the conventional sense, but rather crowded, chaotic holding pens for the dying, where the pervasive aroma of sickness hangs heavy in the air like a visible shroud. They are a brutal testament to the mechanics of survival, transforming grand ambition into a slow, agonizing lesson in the brutal realities of suffering. Imagine approaching such a place, the very air around it seeming heavier, thick with the scent of unwashed bodies, stale blood, and something vaguely metallic and acrid, a pervasive aroma that clings to your nostrils and refuses to leave. The sounds that emanate from within are a symphony of human misery: groans, whimpers, the hollow echo of a cough, and the occasional sharp cry of pain that cuts through the general din. The building itself, often a repurposed edifice or a hastily constructed barracks, offers little in the way of comfort, its stone walls radiating a damp, pervasive chill that seems to cling to your very soul, a chilling reminder that even indoors you are never truly safe from the cold's icy embrace. The entrance, a heavy wooden door that creaks open with a mournful groan, reveals a scene that assaults every one of your senses. The light, what little there is, struggles to penetrate the grimy windows, casting a perpetual gloom over the crowded wards. Here, men, women, and often children lie side by side on straw pallets or thin mattresses, their bodies ravaged by disease, their faces pale and drawn, a sea of suffering humanity. The nurses, often untrained and overwhelmed, move with a weary urgency, their expressions a grim mask of exhaustion, their loyalty to their impossible task stretched thin under the sheer weight of suffering. This, you realize, is a deeper, colder surrender than any you have yet witnessed. A day in such a hospital begins not with the gentle kiss of sunlight, but with the insistent, gnawing ache that has become your most loyal companion, now magnified by the pervasive suffering around you. You awaken, or rather, you drift back into a semi-conscious state, to the sounds of hacking coughs echoing from every corner of the ward, each one a hollow echo of the premise, a testament to the brutal mechanics of survival. The air is thick, almost chewable, with the combined aromas of sickness, old blood, fresh pus, unwashed bodies, and the cloying sweetness of decay, a scent that clings to your lungs with every shallow, hesitant breath. The first anemic light of dawn struggles to pierce the grimy windows, painting the frost-rimmed panes with a somber, muted glow that offers little in the way of warmth or hope. You pull your threadbare blanket tighter, bundling yourself into a cocoon of desperation, hoping to trap a sliver of your own body heat against the damp, penetrating chill that radiates from the stone walls. Your boots, if you still possess them, are not on your feet. They have likely been stolen, or perhaps removed by an attendant, leaving your frostbitten feet exposed to the relentless cold, the dull ache now a searing pain. A commotion begins at one end of the ward, a low murmur that swells into a chorus of moans and grunts. It is the morning round of the attendants, often orderlies or less experienced nurses, tasked with the grim duty of emptying bedpans and chamber pots. The stench, already formidable, intensifies with sickening speed, a wave of putrid waste washing over the ward, stinging your nostrils and burning your throat. You turn your head, burying your face in your arm, but the smell is inescapable, a brutal reminder of the lack of urban hygiene, or rather, the complete absence of it within these very walls. A young woman, barely more than a girl, on the cot beside you, cries out as her bedpan is roughly removed, her emaciated body shaking with tremors. She is suffering from typhus, her mind a fog of feverish delirium, her loyalty to reality stretched thin. You hear her confused babble, a string of nonsensical words, punctuated by a dry, rattling cough that seems to tear at her frail chest. Her skin, you notice, is a landscape of tiny reddish spots, the telltale petechiae of the disease, a chilling signature that whispers of her impending deeper, colder surrender. Breakfast arrives if it can be called that. A meager bowl of watery gruel and a piece of stale, frozen bread, hard as a cobblestone, clutched in the numb hand of an attendant. Each bite is a struggle, each swallow a transaction, with a world determined to freeze you from the inside out, even here, within these supposedly protective walls. The dull ache in your stomach, a constant companion, protests against the bland, unappetizing fare, yet you force yourself to eat, for sustenance, however meager, is a desperate primal need in this brutal mechanics of survival. Soon the doctors make their rounds, a small procession of somber men in stained aprons, often accompanied by a handful of wide-eyed students, eager to learn the grim realities of their profession. Their faces are grim, their expressions a mixture of weariness and detached curiosity as they move from cot to cot, their assessment of each patient swift and often brutal in its brevity. They prod, they poke, they listen with rudimentary stethoscopes, their pronouncements delivered in hushed clinical tones, often devoid of comfort or false hope. You watch as the head surgeon, a man with hands that seem more accustomed to a butcher's cleaver than a healing touch, pauses at the cot of a soldier, his leg a mangled ruin of black, gangrenous flesh. The soldier's face is pale, his lips blue, his eyes wide with a mixture of pain and terror, a profound, primal fear that cuts deeper than any chill. The surgeon's words are clipped, decisive. It must come off. The pronouncement hangs in the air, a chilling echo of the brutal mechanics of survival, a sentence of amputation delivered with the casual indifference of ordering another pint of ale. The preparations are swift, brutal, and utterly devoid of mercy. 4 strong orderlies grasp the soldier, pinning him to the cot with a terrifying efficiency. He screams, a sharp, piercing sound that cuts through the general din of the ward, a desperate, primal cry that transforms grand ambition into a raw, agonizing lesson in sheer agony. You taste the metallic tang of fear in your own mouth, your stomach churning with a mixture of dread and nausea, a deeper, colder surrender to the horror unfolding before your very eyes. The surgeon, with a glint in his eye that seems more akin to a craftsman than a healer, produces a bone saw, its serrated edge gleaming dully in the anemic light. The sound of steel against flesh, the sickening crunch of bone, reverberates through the ward, mingling with the soldier's guttural screams, which rise to an almost unbearable pitch. The air fills with the coppery smell of fresh blood, thick and cloying, a pervasive aroma that clings to your lungs with every shallow, hesitant breath, a chilling reminder that the true enemy isn't always seen, but profoundly felt. The procedure is mercifully swift, brutal in its efficiency. In a matter of minutes, the limb, a mangled ruin of flesh and bone, is severed, falling with a wet thud into a bucket of sawdust and blood. The soldier, now unconscious, lies pale and limp, his body a testament to the brutal mechanics of survival, his life hanging by a thread, his loyalty to his own body forever fractured. The surgeon, wiping his hands on a blood-stained apron, moves on to the next patient, his expression unchanged, already contemplating the next agonizing lesson in human suffering. As the midday sun, a pale, anemic disk in the perpetually overcast sky, offers little in the way of warmth, the sounds of suffering continue unabated. More patients arrive, carried in on stretchers or supported by family members, their faces etched with pain and desperation, each one a fresh wave of human misery washing into the already overflowing wards. A child, no older than 5, lies whimpering on a cot, his body covered in the telltale pustules of smallpox, his small face a landscape of agony, his flesh brittle and disfigured, a chilling reminder of the disease's cruel artistry. Nurses, their faces pale and drawn, move through the wards, changing dressings, their hands, though often numb from the cold, working with a practiced, weary urgency. The sight of open wounds, festering and oozing with pus, is a common one. The smell of infection, a constant, pervasive presence. You witness a dressing being removed from a soldier's arm, revealing a gaping, red cavity, the flesh around it swollen and angry. He grunts in pain, his teeth gritted, his grand ambition reduced to the simple, desperate desire for a moment's relief from the relentless agony. The lack of clean water and soap means that these wounds often worsen rather than heal, becoming breeding grounds for further infection. The concept of germ theory is centuries away. and so the very hands that tend to one wound may unknowingly carry the seeds of death to another. It is a slow, agonizing lesson in the brutal mechanics of survival, where the intention to heal often leads to a deeper, colder surrender, a cruel irony that permeates every aspect of this grim reality. The hollow echo of a cough from the cot beside you seems to mock the futile efforts. The afternoon wears on, a monotonous blur of pain and suffering, punctuated by the occasional scream or the low, mournful tune from a delirious patient. You watch, with a grim fascination, as another body is removed, a silent, shrouded form carried out by two attendants, their movements casual, almost indifferent. Death is a constant companion here, a ubiquitous presence that hovers over every cot, a grim reaper with a permanent residency, transforming grand ambition into a profound understanding of mortality. The cleaning efforts, if they can be called that, are superficial at best. A bucket of murky water and a rough cloth are used to wipe down surfaces, but the pervasive grime, the dried blood, and the lingering stench remain, a testament to the sheer scale of the filth. The air, thick with dust and airborne lint, feels almost chewable, clinging to your lungs with every shallow, hesitant breath, a constant reminder of the unsanitary conditions that foster the very diseases they are attempting to cure. Medicines are administered, often with little understanding of their true efficacy. Laudanum, a potent opiate, is frequently given to dull the pain, transforming the agony into a hazy, dreamlike stupor, a temporary respite from the brutal realities of existence. Quinine, when available, is used for fevers, its bitter taste a familiar companion, but many other concoctions, brewed from dubious herbs or even more questionable substances, are dispensed with unwavering confidence, their effects often more theatrical than truly therapeutic. The pervasive cold inside the building, despite the numerous bodies huddled together, remains a constant, insidious presence. The stone walls radiate a damp, penetrating chill that seems to cling to your very soul, working its way into your bones, making the dull ache of boots fuse to frostbitten feet, a memory that pales in comparison to the internal chill. You pull your threadbare blankets tighter, but the wool, once a comforting embrace, now feels like a thin, inadequate shield against the encroaching darkness and the relentless siege of the outside world, which seems to have found its way inside. As the afternoon light begins its rapid descent into evening, the already dim wards grow darker, illuminated only by the flickering glow of a few tallow candles or sputtering oil lamps. The shadows dance grotesquely on the rough-hewn walls, turning familiar shapes into monstrous specters, preying on the fevered minds of the patients. The sounds of suffering seem to intensify in the encroaching gloom, the moans and whimpers becoming more distinct, more poignant, a chorus of human misery that resonates with the chilling premise of existence here. The night watch begins, a skeleton crew of overworked attendants and a single weary nurse, their faces illuminated by the dancing candlelight, their loyalty to their impossible task stretched to breaking point. Sleep, a precious commodity, is almost impossible to attain, broken by the constant cries of pain, the restless movements of fevered bodies, and the hollow echo of a cough that signals a deeper, colder surrender from a neighboring cot. You lie there, bundled in your threadbare blankets, listening to the symphony of suffering, your mind a hazy fog of fatigue and fear. The occasional snap of settling timbers, the almost imperceptible whisper of the wind whistling through unseen cracks, reminds you that even indoors you are never truly safe from the cold's icy embrace. The warmth from the meager fires, stoked intermittently, slowly dissipates, leaving behind only embers and the faint smell of ash, allowing the creeping, insidious chill to reclaim its dominion over the ward. You close your eyes, trying to conjure a warmer dream, but the brutal mechanics of survival, the constant ache, the pervasive smell of sickness, are too insistent, too real. Death, a silent, ever-present visitor, makes its rounds under the cloak of darkness. You might hear a sudden, sharp gasp, then a profound silence from a nearby cot, a chilling testament to the night's grim harvest. The body will remain there until morning, a stark reminder to all who witness it of their own fragile mortality, a deeper, colder surrender that awaits them all. The weight of frozen bread in a numb hand, the dull ache of boots fused to frost-bitten feet, these fade into insignificance in the face of this ultimate, inescapable chill. And then, just as the last vestiges of warmth have abandoned your bones, the cycle begins anew. Another morning dawns, or rather, another gray pallor replaces the inky blackness. The world outside your dwelling, despite its relentless physical challenges, was not merely a canvas of suffering and cold. It was also a vibrant, if often bizarre, tapestry of human interaction, woven with threads of deep-seated beliefs, superstitions, and a desperate need for connection. Even as the dull ache of boots fused to frostbitten feet became your constant companion, and the weight of frozen bread in a numb hand a daily reality, you found yourself drawn into the communal rhythms of life, where ancient fears mingled with fragile hopes. The creeping, insidious chill that turned flesh brittle might have dominated the physical realm, but the human spirit, resilient and often absurd, found its own ways to navigate the brutal mechanics of survival. One shiver, one whispered rumor, one shared laugh at a time. Grand ambition for many was simply the hope for a slightly warmer tomorrow. The market square, for instance, transformed from a grim scene of commerce into a bustling stage for social exchange, a place where rumors spread faster than a winter cough and superstitions were bartered alongside potatoes. As you navigated the slick, icy cobblestones, the pungent tang of cured meats and unwashed bodies mingling with the sharp scent of wood smoke, you'd overhear hushed conversations about the efficacy of a dried toad's foot for warding off rheumatism, or the proper way to tie a red ribbon to a child's cradle to protect against the evil eye. A pamphlet from 1842, crudely printed and widely circulated, even warned against consuming milk from cows that had been startled by thunder, claiming it would curdle your blood. A bizarre decree in a world where every meal was already a gamble. Taverns, those smoky bastions against the biting wind, were more than just places to find a fleeting warmth and a dubious pint of ale. They were the beating heart of social life, veritable echo chambers for local gossip and outlandish tales. Here, amidst the raucous laughter and the clinking of tankards, you would hear whispered accounts of a neighbor who swore he saw a domovoi, a house spirit, tidying his hearth, or a woman who believed her persistent cough, the hollow echo of a deeper, colder surrender, was caused by a jealous rival's curse. The air inside, thick with the aroma of cheap spirits, roasting meat, and a pervasive, slightly acrid scent of unwashed humanity, became a conduit for these strange beliefs, each tale a brief, boozy respite from the relentless, insidious chill that lay just beyond the heavy wooden door. Religious festivals, despite the relentless cold, were grand, if often grim, affairs, offering a stark contrast to the brutal monotony of daily existence. Imagine the Feast of the Epiphany, for example, where despite the frost-rimmed window panes and the pervasive chill, throngs would gather by the frozen river. You would watch, bundled in your inadequate wool, as a local priest, his breath pluming in the frigid air like a saintly dragon, would bless a hole chopped into the ice. Then, with a collective gasp, brave, or perhaps foolish, souls would plunge into the icy water, believing it would cleanse them of sins and protect them from illness for the coming year, a chilling ritual that made the dull ache of boots fused to frost-bitten feet seem almost pleasant by comparison. Weddings, too, were steeped in a bewildering array of customs, each designed to ward off misfortune and invite prosperity, a desperate hope against the brutal mechanics of survival. You might witness a bride, her hands numb despite the intricate embroidery of her gown, carefully placing a coin under her heel for good fortune. Or a groom, his face ruddy from the cold, deliberately breaking a plate to ensure a long and happy marriage. The celebrations, often held in cramped, smoky homes, would involve endless toasts with questionable spirits and boisterous off-key singing, the air thick with the smell of damp wool and unwashed bodies, a vibrant, if grimy, tableau against the backdrop of an unforgiving world. Even death, that ultimate deeper, colder surrender, was surrounded by a dense thicket of taboos and rituals. When a soul departed, the windows would be flung open, regardless of the biting wind, to allow the spirit to escape freely, lest it linger and bring ill fortune. You would hear of families carefully covering mirrors, fearing the deceased's reflection might trap their soul, or the living in a haunting loop. The body, often washed with a mixture of herbs and prayers, would be laid out for several days, the pervasive chill doing much of the preservation, a grim convenience in a world without iceboxes, its presence a stark reminder that flesh could turn brittle in many ways, both alive and departed. Funerals were somber affairs, yet not without their own strange customs. As the procession made its way through the snow-laden streets, the rhythmic crunch of boots on snow accompanying the mournful toll of bells, mourners might tuck a piece of frozen bread into the deceased's hand, a final sustenance for the journey to the afterlife, a painful burden even in death. You might also notice a coin placed over each of the deceased's eyes, not just for the ferryman, but to prevent the, quote, eye from passing into the living. The hollow echo of a cough from a grieving relative, already battling their own creeping, insidious chill, would often underscore the fragility of life, a constant reminder of the brutal mechanics of survival that shaped every aspect of existence. Social taboos, often unspoken yet rigidly enforced, governed much of daily interaction. It was considered deeply unlucky, for instance, to cut your fingernails or hair on a Tuesday, or to sweep dirt out of the house after sunset, lest you sweep away your good fortune. The lack of proper hygiene, a brutal daily reality where fresh water was a luxury and bathing a rare event, made these seemingly absurd rules take on a strange significance. Imagine avoiding a bath for weeks, not just because of the cold, but because a neighbor once swore that washing on a Monday brought bad luck. Your loyalty to cleanliness thin under the weight of superstition and the creeping, insidious chill. Children, often seen as particularly vulnerable to malevolent forces, were surrounded by their own set of protective rituals. A mother, her numb hands struggling with a needle and thread, might sew a small piece of garlic into her infant's swaddling clothes to ward off sickness, or tie a tiny bell to their ankle to scare away evil spirits. You might observe a grandmother spitting discreetly over a baby's head to protect it from envy, a bizarre yet deeply ingrained gesture. These were not merely quaint traditions. They were desperate attempts to safeguard fragile lives in a world where a child's cough, a hollow echo signaling a deeper, colder surrender, was a far too common sound, transforming grand ambition into a slow, agonizing lesson in hope and despair, one shiver at a time. Even the simple act of eating was fraught with unspoken rules. It was taboo to pass salt directly from hand to hand, as it was believed to lead to an argument, or to leave a spoon upright in a bowl, inviting bad luck. You might find yourself carefully placing a piece of frozen bread on the table before offering it, rather than directly into a numb hand, a small, subtle gesture steeped in generations of belief. These mundane actions, imbued with a hidden layer of meaning, underscored how deeply superstition permeated the brutal mechanics of survival, shaping every hesitant breath and every interaction, ensuring that the creeping, insidious chill affected not just your bones, but your very thoughts and social fabric. The sheer, unyielding brutality of that existence, a world where the creeping, insidious chill turned flesh brittle and loyalty thin, could not and did not persist in its full, unforgiving horror. Slowly, painstakingly, like the first hesitant thaw after an endless winter, a collective conscience began to stir. The hollow echo of a cough, the dull ache of boots fused to frost-bitten feet, the weight of frozen bread in a numb hand. These were not merely individual sufferings, but a shared symphony of misery that demanded, eventually, a reckoning. People, witnessing the agonizing lessons in the brutal mechanics of survival, one shiver at a time, began to question the very fabric of a society that accepted such widespread human degradation as an immutable truth. This awakening, though glacial in its pace, initiated a profound shift, a slow, deliberate turning of the tide against the relentless, unseen enemies that had plagued humanity for so long. From the stench and sickness of the overcrowded hospitals, where the smell of unwashed bodies and stale blood was a pervasive aroma, sprang the seeds of modern public health. Laws began to emerge, hesitant at first, then with increasing clarity, demanding proper sewage systems, clean water supplies, and basic sanitation. Imagine, if you can, the revolutionary concept of digging trenches not for war, but for waste, or the audacity of piping fresh, clean water into homes. a luxury once unimaginable. These were the first monumental steps away from a world where every drink was a gamble, every breath a shallow transaction with disease. If today you turn a tap and clear, safe water flows, a simple act you barely register, you owe it to the countless lives lost to cholera and typhus, whose suffering illuminated the path towards communal well-being, transforming grand ambition for survival into the quiet dignity of a healthy life. The unforgiving gears of the textile mills, the suffocating blackness of the coal mines, and the grotesque disfigurements from match factories, where the creeping, insidious chill manifested as bone-dissolving phossy jaw, eventually spurred a different kind of fight. Labor movements, born from the raw agony of exploited bodies and shattered lives, began to demand change. Laws were eventually passed, though often after fierce resistance, limiting working hours, banning child labor, a stark contrast to young Thomas's mangled arm, and establishing rudimentary safety standards. The concept of a weekend, that precious, universal respite from toil, was once a radical dream, a privilege earned on the backs of those who knew only relentless labor. If today you enjoy a Saturday free from the immediate threat of a collapsing tunnel or a limb caught in hungry machinery, you taste the bitter legacy of their agonizing lessons in survival, one brutal shift at a time. The bizarre and dangerous deceptions in food, where your daily bread might be an architectural experiment of plaster and sawdust, or your milk a toxic brew of chalk and lead, gave rise to the foundational principles of food safety. Public outcry, fueled by sickness and death, led to the establishment of regulatory bodies and inspection processes. Suddenly, it was no longer acceptable to sell diseased animals or to lace beer with belladonna. The very idea of honest ingredients, of a meal that wouldn't subtly poison you, was a hard-won victory. If today you bite into a piece of bread, soft and fresh, without feeling the gritty texture of something decidedly not grain, or drink milk without fear of arsenic, you are partaking in a quiet, daily miracle, a profound testament to the loyalty that was forged in the face of such widespread culinary betrayal, making grand ambition for nourishment a safe reality. In the grim, chaotic hospitals, where the bone saw was a more familiar sight than true healing, the understanding of disease slowly, painstakingly began to shift. The discovery of germ theory by scientists like Pasteur and Lister, once radical and often ridiculed, slowly unraveled the mystery of unseen enemies. Antiseptics, anesthesia, and ultimately a focus on hygiene and sterile practices transformed these charnel houses into places of genuine healing. The hollow echo of a cough no longer solely signaled a deeper, colder surrender, but a challenge to be met with knowledge and effective care. If today you lie in a hospital bed, confident in the cleanliness of your surroundings and the efficacy of your treatment, you are a beneficiary of a colossal paradigm shift, a quiet revolution born from the pervasive aroma of sickness and the brutal mechanics of survival that once dominated every ward. Culturally and symbolically, the legacy of that era is etched deep into the modern psyche, a subtle undercurrent beneath the surface of our comfortable lives. The enduring human drive for progress, for knowledge, for dignity in the face of overwhelming adversity is a direct echo of those who endured the constant, insidious chill. The quiet comfort of your heated home, the effortless access to clean food and water, the simple act of breathing air untainted by industrial dust or pervasive illness. These are not merely conveniences. They are monuments to the forgotten, shivers, the numb hands, and the aching feet of those who came before. They represent the triumph of collective will over the brutal mechanics of survival, transforming grand ambition not into individual glory, but into a shared, enduring legacy of well-being for all. This journey from a world defined by the weight of frozen bread and a numb hand to one where such hardships are largely historical footnotes is a testament to the slow, agonizing, yet ultimately triumphant march of humanity. It is a poetic unfolding of progress, a quiet lullaby sung by the ghosts of the past, whispering of the battles won, the lessons learned, and the deep, abiding value of a warmth that extends beyond mere temperature. So, as you drift into a softer, warmer dream, perhaps you can feel, just for a moment, the comforting warmth of a collective victory, a profound, enduring peace earned one shiver, one reform, one gentle breath at a time.